If you're the purchasing manager at a manufacturing plant, you know having a trusted partner makes all the difference. That's why, hands down, you count on Grainger for auto reordering. With on-time restocks, your team will have the cut-resistant gloves they need at the start of their shift. And you can end your day knowing they've got safety well in hand. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hello, and thank you for listening to The History of World War II podcast, episode 602, Victory at Mount Etna. Last time, Operation Hardgate, the Allied plan to smash the Germans' outer defensive line by taking the town of Adrano, got underway on August 2nd. Things were going well, but still, there was fighting to be done before the main fight. Towns like Centoripe had to be taken, and though the 36th Irish Brigade had been bloodied, Centoripe, the anchor for the Germans outside of their main defensive line, had been subdued. Now the Germans retreated to the north across the rivers Salso and Cemento, where they would set up again, that is, if the Irish 38th Brigade did not stop them. Both sides were exhausted from the fighting, but it was clearly a time of digging in. Metaphorically speaking, the digging in was needed to mine the last of the men's energy reserves. Besides, orders were orders. To the northeast was the only way left to go for the Allies, hell, for the Axis too, as towns to the west like Aguirre and Rigabuto had already been captured by the Canadians, again at the cost of much blood. After leaving Centoripe, the river Salso had to be encountered first, then the Cemento River, and then it was a straight, but not easy, shot at Adrano. The Enniskillen's Fusiliers pushed on to the northeast. As the Salso is just under 3 miles above Centoripe, the leading patrols reached it by noon, August 3rd, the same day that they had found Centoripe had been abandoned by the enemy. That evening, they had crossed the Salso. Per Operation Hardgate, the divisional artillery was now moved to Centoripe. With its height, Allied guns now covered the advancing Irish brigade. To be sure, it was a pain in the back and other body parts, as jeeps and brute strength had to be used, as the road to the town was still being repaired. But it was worth it. Further, to the east-northeast, the road that went from Adrano to Paterno, the latter northwest of Catania, was also now in range of the guns, rendering it unusable by the enemy. As August 3rd went by, the guns of the 51st Highland Division were also added. As speed was the order of the day here, the London Irish Rifles and the Royal Irish Fusiliers followed in the path set by the Royal Enniskillen Fusiliers and crossed the river during the afternoon of August 4th. By sunset, all 3 battalions were in between the 2 rivers. The problem, though, was that this was all done on foot. The Salso River was 100 feet across, and bridging equipment, much less trucks, could not catch up to them as the road to Centoripe was still being repaired. The Germans had done a thorough job there. Besides, even when the road to the town was fixed, the trucks still had to go down the other side of this great height, and there speed would not be the order of the day. The next day, August 5th, the Royal Irish Fusiliers had put 2 companies across the more northern Cemento River, but it had been hard won. Both company commanders were wounded in the process, and 2 platoons from these 2 companies had been pushed back to the south. A bridgehead, to be sure, but not a secure one. The Germans had reached their limit of retreating, it seems, at least for now. Meanwhile, the sappers had finished putting a bridge over the Salso, mostly by working at night and enduring enemy shell fire. Also, other sappers had crept up to the Cemento River to get an idea of what it would take to bridge that, hopefully in the near future, as command wanted to cross the Cemento in strength ASAP. It was ever thus. Yet it would not be easy. The Cemento had steeper banks and a faster current should something go wrong. Yet not waiting for a bridge over the Cimento, as clearly the Germans were not going to leave here unless motivated, it was time to attack. That same August 5th, with the London Irish holding the left flank on the south side of the Cimento, the Enniskillens moved up to join them. The Royal Irish Fusiliers added a company to this building formation. The Germans, it seems, were in caves, thus a brigade-strength attack was needed. The London Irish and Enniskillens would move out at 3:30 p.m., and supporting them, hopefully canceling out the caves, was the divisional artillery and additional 4 batteries of medium guns and 2 platoons of 4.2-inch mortars of the 1st Battalion Princess Louise Kensington Regiment. All these guns were going to be needed. Not only were the Germans hiding in caves or using stones as their shelter, there were 2 stone houses there. The Allied gun units called them Casino and the Palace, and they would receive special attention. 3:30 p.m. came, and the troops moved out, covered by artillery fire. As tough as this was going to be, the Germans were about to learn a lesson that the Allies, certainly the Canadians, had learned during the disastrous operation launched at Dieppe. When an explosive lands near you among rocks, the fragments of those rocks are not your friends. The very thing shielding you is now shredding your skin. Chaos ensued within the German ranks, all the while the men of the British battalions moved forward. But more than artillery was used against the German defenses. The attackers had anti-tank guns and PIATs with them, offering them a more accurate targeting of the opportunities before them. One by one, the German positions fell, creating captives or casualties, while others retreated. By 9 p.m., the immediate threat to the relatively small bridgehead over the Cimento River was safe. As for the Casino and the Palace, the owners would find themselves having to rebuild. Zooming out a bit, the men of the 38th Irish Brigade had been on the move, fighting from August 1st to the night of the 5th. They were exhausted and had earned a rest, which they were given 5 days on the Cimento River. Meanwhile, the other 2 brigades of the 78th Division, the 11th and 36th, advanced, keeping the Germans on the move. In the lead, chasing the Axis troops, the armored cars of the 56th Reconnaissance Regiment headed to the northeast towards Adrano. Not that this was easy or safe for them, as road mines put in by the Germans took out at least 3 armored cars. In other areas, German ambushes set up by artillery forced the men of the 78th Division to move more slowly and cautiously than they wanted to. Still, the 78th did move on, but when at a certain point, they were ordered to halt. This allowed the Germans to enter Adrano without having to fight as they did, but soon enemy artillery and bombing attacks made their lives a living hell. This death from above went on for the next 2 days. On August 7th, the 11th Brigade entered Adrano, and no one was there to shoot at them. As the 11th Brigade was not now dealing with wounded, exhaustion, or depleted supplies, having had fought their way into Adrano, they were ordered to advance north, their next target being Bronte, at the 9 o'clock position of Mount Etna. The men of the 11th Brigade kept moving, covering about 10 miles, and then stopped 1 mile south of the town of Bronte. Seeing the Germans dug in, it was time for something different. Instead of just rushing forward, the 11th Brigade broke into smaller parts and sent men to the west and east of the town, capturing the heights there. So when the main attack came from the south, the Germans were already in an untenable position. To be sure, the defenders used mines, machine guns, and Nebewerfers as before, but it didn't change their exposed position. Before August 8th was over, the Germans retreated again, but again, still in good order, and Bronte was taken. Now it was the 11th Brigade's turn to rest, and for the 36th Brigade to take the lead. The next target was the town of Randazzo at the 11 o'clock position relative to Mount Etna. The Germans were running out of room, but needed more time for their comrades to retreat. Thus here, their defense would be more substantial. But about halfway to Randazzo was the town of Mileto, which sits along the road and is near much higher ground which overlooks the road that approaches Mileto. The good news for the Allies was that as the men of the 36th Brigade, 78th Division advanced, on their left were elements of the 1st Canadian Division, and even further left was elements of the 9th U.S. Division, meaning they, the Americans, were coming at Randazzo practically from the west. It had already been decided, but again, Patton was still not trusting Monty, that the two divisions of the 8th Army would be squeezed out by the Americans at Mount Etna. As the former, the GIs were to keep driving east. Still, Mileto and Randazzo had to fall first. When the sun rose on August 9th, 36th Brigade moved out towards Mileto. A company of the Buffs kept getting closer to Mileto, and they did manage to grab the high ground west of town. This gave them control of the road that led to the town, but to the east of it, the Germans controlled the opposite height, which they used to harass the British with their artillery. Needing this threat neutralized, an attack was launched at the Germans here, but they beat it back. With that British company falling back, a different company was used to launch another attack, but this too was defeated. Only an attack, this one carried out by the Royal West Kents, supported by 3 tanks, did the trick. Meanwhile, the height south of town was painfully taken by the 8th Argylls the next day. Piece by piece, the surrounding area of Mileto was becoming Allied-owned. But the southern height just taken by the Argylls overlooked the other height that had just been fought over, which is why the defense there had been so determined. The Germans, in trying to buy time, were making the enemy take every piece of real estate. Now having most of the southern height under control, called Mount Cerrone, the Allies now attacked Mileto proper, and still they were getting shelled from another height. Having lost men on attacking the eastern height, which had again taken 3 times, this new threat was only attacked when darkness came. This latest threat was removed, but there were still small pockets of resistance lingering in the area. So other units were sent to clear them up, but the 11th Brigade, now back at the point, was sent on to Randazzo. Again, the idea was to not let the Germans have any rest, which is when they came under, or almost came under, American artillery, trying to fire on the retreating Germans along the road. The 11th Brigade took a slightly different route and let their American comrades know they were in the area. The Americans adjusted their fire. This allowed the British to continue applying pressure. At 9:30 a.m., now August 13th, the Royal Irish Fusiliers and men from the 9th U.S. Division met up just south of Randazzo. For a moment, the animosity was forgotten, each side appreciated the other, and they all felt good about the success they were having. Seeing this coming together of 2 different forces about to work together to invade the town Randazzo, the Germans within destroyed everything of value and then retreated to the east. From here, the Americans would take over relative to the 78th Division, which had done stellar service. As had the Irish Brigade, they had been equally impressive. Their total casualties were 25 officers and 365 of all other ranks, which may not be considered unusually large numbers, but given the total amount of fighting they had seen in the last week plus, it was their company commanders that suffered the most, with 5 killed and 5 more wounded.
We're leaving today and entering a world of Mickey Mouse waving, princess meeting and greeting, lightsaber clashing, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror dropping, Banshee flying, Space Mountain launching, galaxy rewinding. What's the point with galaxy rewinding? Fireworks igniting. World of other worlds. For whatever you love, infinite worlds await at the most magical place on Earth, Walt Disney World Resort.
Switching over to the Americans, while the British 30th Corps had been fighting their way north on the western side of Mount Etna, the Americans, i.e. Patton, was thinking of Messina. While the Provisional Corps was scattered around western Sicily, cleaning up pockets of resistance, General Bradley's 2nd U.S. Corps was also divided. Back on July 22nd, the 45th Division had been moving to the northwest, towards Termini, along the northern coast, about 15 miles east, or as the coastline goes, southeast, of Palermo. So Termini is just left of center of the overall northern coastline. As for the 1st U.S. Division, the Big Red One, it was helping capture Enna, the farthest western extent of 30th Corps, say 30 miles or 48 kilometers west-southwest of Adrano. When both Termini and Enna were taken, both U.S. divisions moved east. The 45th Division along the northern coastal road, Highway 113, while the 1st Division, joined by the 39th Regimental Combat Team from the 9th U.S. Division, was moving on Highway 120, about 10 miles north of the Canadians, as they had been pushing and fighting their way east along Highway 121. After the town of Enna had fallen, the 1st U.S. Division had to travel about 21 miles to the northeast to reach Highway 120, and now moving east, adding their might to the Allied tidal wave that was heading towards Mount Etna. Not that Bradley's 45th Infantry Division had it easy moving along the northern coast. The highway there, like all of the roads on Sicily, wound around natural obstacles, creating numerous and natural ambush points, which is exactly what the Axis did. The infantry and the engineers were hard put to fix what had been broken and then move on, at least to the next demolished point. But sometimes even this wasn't enough. The 157th Regimental Combat Team, having helped reach the north coast to Termini, turned right with the rest of the division and moved on. 6 miles down the road, the town of Campo Felice was come upon, and the Italians there were dug in. Still, they did not last, and the 157th RCT was again on the move in the lead. The next town, 5 miles further, was Cefalu, and again the Italians were dug in, and again the 157th broke through. But soon they were stopped by a blown bridge, coupled with a minefield. But knowing Patton's expectations, while the 157th demonstrated to give the Italians something to look at, the 179th RCT swung around to the right of the road. Yes, there were hills and mountains for them to deal with, but the men of the 179th moved on. But it was the 180th RCT, which had taken the place of the 157th, who were getting a rest, that ran into serious resistance, German resistance, as men from the 29th Panzer Grenadier Division were using a 3,000-foot high hill at Pizzo Spina, about 4 miles east of Cefalu. If the GIs wanted to engage the enemy at Pizzo Spina, they would have to climb up those cliffs first, which is exactly what they did. Like Tweedy and his men, the GIs scaled the height at night, gathered themselves, and attacked, catching the Germans off guard, and they were only there to delay. The Germans eventually gave way, but set up another defense along another series of ridges just west of San Stefano, about 6 miles further down the road. Now, this constant walking, fighting, climbing, walking some more, only to fight some more, was starting to tell on the GIs. But it was the same for the Axis troops, which is when the worst fight to happen on Sicily for the 157th commenced. The 157th RCT, or Thunderbirds, took point during the night of July 26th, which is when they ran into a system of German strongholds that had pillboxes, booby traps, and mines. Seeing the height before them, soon to be called the Bloody Ridge by the Thunderbirds, they started climbing. This turned out to be so strenuous that several of their pack mules died of exhaustion. Starting to get a sense of the German defenses, The 2nd Battalion was sent to the right to hit the Germans from the south. Meanwhile, 2 other battalions would come at them from the northwest, having gone as far north as they could. During the first American attack, the 1st Battalion managed to destroy 2 pillboxes, but before they could do anything else, a German counterattack came at them, supported by artillery and mortar fire. The Germans could see their comrades lose the 2 pillboxes and could read the writing on the wall. So they charged. And again, here as in other battles of Sicily, the very rocks were turned into shrapnel by the explosives. Needing to try something different, a chemical mortar company was brought forward, and they launched 4.2 white phosphorus shells at the Axis defensive position. This went on all day of July 28th and into the 29th. But on the 29th, 4 divisional artillery battalions joined in for 15 minutes. Then the GIs charged again. The Germans bent, but did not break. Soon the GIs were having to fall back again, but they knew that when they turned around to retreat, they would be attacked in their rear. So 4 machine gunners stayed behind to cover their comrades' retreat. Privates First Class Olson, McGee, and Howe, and Private Blanco. The GIs were able to retreat to safety, but these 4 men died and were awarded the Distinguished Service Cross posthumously. As earth-shaking as the artillery battalions were, something with more destructive capability was needed against these Germans in their high-up caves. Until that was figured out, the American advance along the northern coastal road was blocked. But who had bigger guns than the Army? Oh, that's right, the U.S. Navy. Greetings, everyone, from Central Virginia. So we finally got the Americans into it. Mount Etna, as far as the lower parts of it on the west side, have been taken. The Germans are going to have to pull back from the Primasol Bridge position because of the outflanking maneuver, which, of course, was part of the plan. Anyways, but there's still some fighting to go on. So anyways, I'd like to thank and welcome aboard my 2 new members. Let's see here, Aldrin Soja from New York. Thank you very much, Aldrin. And Lester Oberholzer from Iowa. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It is greatly appreciated. As far as those who have made donations, let's see here. There is Bud E. Bogman and Derek Chen. Oh, and there's one more. I'm sorry about that. I can't count. Brian Scottline. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, Brian. If I'm not, just let me know and I will lash myself. But anyways, thank you very much, gentlemen, for the donations. It is greatly appreciated. And for those that do, because this is coming out on a Friday, I hope you have a great Valentine's Day with the one you love. And if the one you love is yourself, well, isn't that the greatest love there is? Anyways, don't quote me on that. So I will see you next week, and we will begin to wrap up Operation Husky. Take care, everyone.